All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're looking at something, well, it's pretty out there, but in a fascinating way. We're exploring a really ambitious idea, a plan for world peace that claims to blend mathematics, consciousness, and, get this, a divine revelation. It's a journey into a framework that says it's found the very code of reality itself.
But here's the thing. This explainer doesn't start with a dry theory. It starts with a story, a really intense one, actually. It's about a moment of personal crisis that the author says sparked a revelation, one that felt like it stretched across countless eternities. We're talking about a story of rage, deep compassion, and a mind-bending encounter with a being from the very end of time.
Okay, so Section 1, a revelation for peace. Let's dig into what this revelation actually was. How does someone go from a personal crisis to a cosmic plan? The origin story here is, well, it's really something.
So the story goes like this. It starts in 2017. The author becomes this influential figure in the Asgardia Space Nation project, but then gets banned for promoting evidence of extraterrestrial influence. Now, just a few days later, he's hit with this profound personal rage, and that's when he has a vision. He sees this terrified, non-human being, and then time just freezes. This being, it turns out, is a time-traveling super assassin, the very last of our descendants, who's been consuming timelines to literally erase its own existence. Wild, right? But here's the turning point. For the first time in all of history, it sees unconditional love in the author, and that changes everything. It finds a new purpose, and together they supposedly come up with this grand plan to make sure the most harmonious timeline is the one that survives, even using ancient scriptures as a kind of checksum to confirm they're on the right track.
All right, Section 2. This wild personal experience, it wasn't just a story. It gave birth to a whole new framework for understanding reality. The author calls it the omniversal theory.
So what is the omniversal theory? Well, think of it like this. It's a speculative idea that says reality is this huge interconnected web of timelines. Every single possible outcome, it happens somewhere, at least once. But here's the key. It's not just chaos. There are things like divergence points, entropy, and this is crucial, consciousness itself, which influences something called harmony to shape the whole structure of this omniverse.
Now, this is where the theory really veers off the beaten path of mainstream science. I mean, physics has its own ideas about multiverses, right? Like the many worlds interpretation. But those are grounded in hard math and physics. The omni-universal theory, on the other hand, says that consciousness and harmony are actual forces, causal agents that can change timelines. It even introduces concepts like a zeroth dimension of unconditional love. So yeah, it's a very different way of looking at the universe. And look, to be fair, even an advanced AI system that peer-reviewed this called it out. It gave it a 4 out of 10 for scientific merit, saying it's creative but not convincing. It suggested it could be a cool philosophical framework, maybe even a sci-fi concept, but as it stands, it's not ready for serious scientific debate. So that's the spirit we're approaching this in. Not as hard science, but as a really fascinating thought experiment.
Okay, moving on to Section 3, a fractal language. So if the theory is the what, this next part is the how. The author claims the key to unlocking this whole framework is hidden in a kind of lost mathematical language, a visual pattern.
And that pattern is called the fractal of ceneezer. You're going to love this. It's made from a surprisingly simple idea. You just take a regular multiplication table, find the digital root of every number. Where you add the digits until you get a single number. And then you extend that pattern into the negative numbers. What you get is this unique, infinitely repeating grid. The author calls it a fingerprint for any numerical base. And believe it or not, the logic to create this whole thing is captured right here in this little piece of Python code. It's all it takes to generate this perfectly symmetrical grid. You can see how it would mirror itself around that central cross of zeros. The author has a cool name for that cross, a revelation bridge. It's this point where the predictable patterns suddenly flip, and that's supposed to be where new understanding can break through.
And here it is. This is what it looks like in base 10. You can really see that perfect symmetry around the central cross of zeros, right? It's pretty cool looking. But according to the theory, this isn't just a neat math trick. This is supposed to be a visual language powerful enough to describe reality itself.
So, Section 4, Mapping Reality by Number. If this fractal is a language, what is it saying? The idea here is that by looking at this pattern in different numerical bases, we can actually uncover the layers of reality, one by one. Each new base builds on the truths of the ones that came before.
And where does it all start? Well, at the most fundamental level you can possibly imagine, base 2.
So in this model, base 2 is the absolute core rule of our universe. It's all about binary change. The simple difference between something, a 1, and nothing, a 0, is what creates the fundamental flow of existence that we experience as time. It's the old saying, right? The only constant is change.
And from that super simple foundation, everything else starts to grow. Base 3 comes next, and that introduces individuation. Suddenly, those binary events get their own identities. Then, base 4 adds what's called temporal duality. Basically, the arrow of time, creating a forward progression and a backward reflection. Think memory and anticipation. And then you get to base 5, and that's where you get emergent complexity. This is where those dual flows start interacting to create all the layered systems we see around us, from tiny atoms all the way up to entire ecosystems.
Okay, Section 5, a moral compass for AI. So, why are we talking about all this? What's the point? This is where it gets really ambitious, and maybe hopeful. The ultimate goal here is to use this framework to build a moral compass for artificial intelligence.
The plan is to create a two-tiered moral framework for an AI. The first tier is made of unbreakable, universal rules. These come from the low bases, like base 2's rule of change or base 5's emergent complexity. An AI simply cannot violate these because they're like the laws of physics for existence. But then, the second tier is all about aspirational human ideals. Things like resolving paradoxes, love, and even world peace. These are modeled in higher bases, and they become the goals the AI is supposed to strive for. The idea is to build an AI that learns ethics not from our messy, biased human writing, but from the pure mathematical structure of reality itself.
And that brings us to the core of those aspirational goals. In this model, ideals like love aren't just fluffy, sentimental things. No, they're defined as fundamental forces. And love, specifically, is described as the strongest binding force of all, the ultimate principle that could guide an AI, and maybe even us, toward true harmony.
Which brings us to our final section, what if it works? This whole thing, from the revelation to the fractal to the AI, it leaves us with some really big, provocative questions. It's a vision that really pushes us to think differently about technology, about morality, and, our place in the cosmos.
I mean, think about it. Could a mathematical fractal, something born from a deeply personal revelation, truly guide the moral development of an artificial superintelligence? It sounds like a huge leap, doesn't it? Connecting spirituality to the absolute cutting edge of technology. But what if a universal pattern really could provide a universal ethic?
And if it could, well, what would an AI that's guided by the fundamental patterns of reality ultimately teach us about ourselves? That's the real question, isn't it? Maybe the path to world peace isn't just about changing our policies or our leaders. Maybe it's about understanding the deepest code of our own reality. What do you think? Is this a path forward or just a beautiful fiction? We genuinely love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for your time today. If you found this explainer thought-provoking, please do like, share, and subscribe. It really helps.